Jesus Christ was radical, and he said a lot of things that weren't liked, and he wasn't loved. But at the end of the day, he stood for truth, and I think men cannot be afraid and cannot waver, and they need to stand for truth.
Can I say amen? I mean, it seems appropriate to say amen. Amen. You remember the shooting at the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl parade, right? This happened right toward the end of the parade. There was a shooting. Turns out, we were told we weren't allowed to know the identities of the shooters for several days because we were told they were underage, but it turns out they weren't underage, not all of them at least. We were told by our superiors in the media and also by the Democrats who do their bidding and they do whose bidding they do, that this was all about the ubiquity of guns. We had Joe Biden and Karine Jean-Pierre immediately call for a renewed assault weapons ban, even though by every measure and every eyewitness account, this had nothing to do with an assault weapon, a so-called assault weapon. I still contest that there's no such thing as an assault weapon. These were handguns involved here. But you were told all of those things because the narrative had to be maintained. It had to be upheld. We've now learned even more about this shooting, and the latest out of Kansas City is that 3 men now face federal firearm charges related to the mass shooting at the Super Bowl rally. That's right. They broke the law by having those guns. One of the guns, the Glock that I believe is the Glock that was used to kill the one victim, the homicide victim, a radio talk show host, or excuse me, a morning radio host in Kansas City. That gun was stolen. Right. And now we have 3 other federal firearm charges. In other words, this is an important thing to point out here. There are already laws, many laws on the books related to the guns used in the Kansas City shooting after the Super Bowl parade. And shockingly, surprisingly, this is going to blow your mind. But all of those laws that are already in place related to the gun possession were violated by the people willing to shoot innocents in broad daylight. They seem to not worry too much about the federal gun charges that they were violating. And those federal gun laws didn't prevent the shooting from happening. I know, it's shocking. It appears now that the individuals who were arrested that day and are now suspected of a mass shooting at the Super Bowl parade, including the homicide of one young woman shot down in the prime of life. Apparently, not only were they willing to violate the law against murder, but they were also willing to violate the law against gun possession. It seems to me we clearly need more gun laws. More gun laws related to gun ownership, gun possession, gun purchases, transfers of ownership, the number of bullets that are in your magazine, the size of the barrel. We just need a whole lot more gun laws, because then maybe the people who are already willing to violate the law against murder will then take this seriously. It's like, oh yeah, I was going to kill somebody today, but now that there's a law against the number of rounds I can have in my mag, oh, the government's super serious about this. Never mind the fact that Missouri literally has the death penalty right now against people who murder. That they're willing to risk, but they're not going to risk violating a federal gun charge. That's the stupidity of people who immediately call for more gun laws. That's the stupidity of them. I have decided never to take another lawmaker seriously who calls for a gun law unless they call for a complete repeal of the Second Amendment and outright gun confiscation. Now, I don't think that's a good idea. God forbid. Trust me. That's the worst thing that could possibly, and it will never happen in this country. But if you are looking to legislate with regard to gun ownership in this country, the only thing that will achieve the end you're actually pretending to want to achieve is that. Everything else is noise. Everything else is bull. Everything else is fundraising. Everything else is chest thumping and attention. If you are not willing to repeal the Second Amendment and call for outright gun confiscation and no more ownership of guns in America, then you are not serious about gun legislation, because that's the only thing. And some of them will admit it. Some of them will say, yeah, we should do what Australia did. Well, go look at what they mean when they say Australia, because that's exactly what Australia did. Except they didn't have a Second Amendment to repeal. That's the only. So So Larry, what are you saying then? If we can't have the Second Amendment repealed and have outright gun confiscation, which we absolutely cannot, and you're saying all these people who are talking about new gun laws, they're just, blowing smoke and they're just trying to get attention and raise money, and they're not serious about this, then what's the solution? What do we do? Well, I'm glad you asked. There was a man there at this parade. His name is Harrison Butker. He is the Kansas City Chiefs kicker. He is a devout Catholic. He is a man of faith. He not only witnessed this horrific shooting and murder that took place before his very eyes, but he's actually done something for the victims, for the families. He's helped care for them. He's gone to visit them. He's helped raise money for them. He's donated jerseys for fundraising. He was asked on EWTN about this shooting, how it affected him, and what the solution is. And shockingly, he doesn't say anything about a new gun law. Watch what he does say.
I do want to ask, there is a debate in this country over the best way to curb gun violence after being so close to it.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
Yeah. I had to do a lot of thinking about what took place at the parade. I know gun violence was a big discussion, but at the end of the day, this is degenerate violence and it should not be occurring. I think we need strong fathers in the home. I think we need men that are leading, that are setting good examples, that are teaching the young men in our society that violence is not the way to handle our disputes. It's very unfortunate what happened. Unfortunately, many, many children were injured. Beautiful young lady was killed over someone getting offended and turning to violence to handle that dispute. It's so sad. I don't think guns are the issue. I think we need fathers in the home that are being great examples for our youth.
See, now that doesn't raise money when you're running for office. And that you can't legislate, right? You can't make a law. Could you? That forces men to be good fathers? That would be kind of cool law, though, right? You pass a law that compels a man to actually father the child that he has created by inseminating a woman. You sleep around, a baby is born, you father that child, or you're going to jail. I know that's ridiculous, but what would actually solve society's problems more? A law like that, or a law confiscating guns in America and repealing the Second Amendment? Neither of them are going to happen. But which one would actually fix our problems? Harrison Butker calling this what it is, degenerate crime, a degenerate nihilistic view of America. How many of those young men who got arrested for this ridiculous shooting, this disgusting, evil shooting, how many of them you think had intact families? How many of them had a father in the home? Would you be surprised to learn that none of them did? I wouldn't. And by the way, this comes from a man like his peers in the NFL who knows very well exactly how to channel the innate male aggression that we are born with into something positive and constructive. In this case, football. Sure, he's a kicker, but they're still tough guys. Look at his beard. Men need fathers. Men need brothers, or the brotherhood that they get from athletic team. Men need direction to focus and channel their energies. And yes, their aggression. And yes, sometimes their violent aggression. And you take all of the new gun laws in the world away, and you still got a problem. More from Harrison Butker.
What do you think are some specific challenges men face today that could be keeping them from their potential?
I think part of the fall from the first sin of Adam and Eve is men want to be like women and women want to be like men. You see a lot of times where women want to be leading the marriage and they want to be the head of the household, and the man, it's the Homer Simpson, sit on the couch, drink beer, and just watch TV and just let everything go on around me. And I'm not really at the center of what's even going on in my household. So I'm very passionate about encouraging men to be courageous, to not be afraid to be the leader. It's something that we struggle with, I think, a lot of times, to go outside of our comfort zone and to say, you know what, God has called me to be a leader and to lead by example. I'm going to lead my household, and I'm going to lead outside the world when I'm evangelizing. So that's something that I'm very passionate about. And I think more men need to not care about what the world says about them. They need to have strong men that support them with iron sharpening iron. And they need to be encouraged that Jesus Christ was radical. And he said a lot of things that weren't liked, and he wasn't loved. But at the end of the day, he stood for truth. And I think men cannot be afraid and cannot waver, and they need to stand for truth.
Can I say amen? I mean, it seems appropriate to say amen. Amen. That is great stuff. This was on EWTN. This won't happen on ESPN. ESPN is where this needs to be seen and heard. But sadly, I doubt they'll pick it up. In fact, they won't even interview Harrison because they know what he's going to say. It's great to, we talk a lot, and I talk a lot. My old friend and mentor, the dear departed Andrew Breitbart, not Ronald Reagan. He was not my friend and mentor. Andrew Breitbart is always over my shoulder there. And if you haven't read his book, you should. He's the person who coined the phrase "politics is downstream of culture," right? And it's an important thing. You hear people quote it all the time, but I don't think they always get it. What do we mean by culture? Do we mean TV shows? Do we mean music? Do we mean, plays or movies? Yes and no. You know what we really mean? See, what you just heard from Harrison Butker about faith and religion and solid values that have made Western civilization soar for, I don't know, about 2,000 years now. Those values, those principles, yes, rooted in my faith, but you don't have to be Christian to buy into the fact that makes a lot of sense. It helps. That's culture. Movies, TV shows, plays, music, that's a circumstance and result of the larger cultural things that we're talking about here. We can make our movies and we can make our TV shows, but ultimately, if we're not changing the inherent issues of how we go about our daily lives, thinking about what's important and what we value, and right and wrong, objective, moral, right and wrong, which is a notion that is pretty old-fashioned nowadays, because that's all supposed to be relative, right? Until you change that, you're not actually changing culture. In other words, yes, politics is downstream of culture, but culture is downstream from very fundamental, important truths. That stuff is the harder stuff. That stuff you don't legislate. That stuff you don't win elections on. That stuff you don't raise money when you're running for office on. But that's the stuff that changes the country. That's the stuff we need to focus on. Are you going to see this interview anywhere else today? Unless you're watching EWTN or watching us right here today, are you going to see that message sent to football fans, to young people, young men who need role models, who need icons to look up to and help channel that? No. Will Pat McAfee play this? Hey, Pat McAfee, are you going to play this? You've got a really big, important audience. Stephen A. Smith, how about you? Will you share this? You could even share it and then disagree with it, but get this message out, will you? And if not, why not? Who's making decisions for you that this doesn't make the cut in your show rundown?